I knew my daughter-in-law, Emily, cared too much about appearances long before the wedding day, but I never imagined she would humiliate my wife publicly in front of hundreds of guests. My name is Thomas, I'm 70 years old, and my wife Carol has been the heart of our family for over 4 decades. She's the kind of woman who remembers everyone's birthdays, sends handwritten thank you cards, and somehow still worries more about other people being comfortable than herself. When our son Michael introduced us to Emily 3 years ago, Carol welcomed her immediately. She treated her like a daughter from the very beginning. She helped plan bridal showers, spent weekends shopping for decorations, and even dipped into her retirement savings to help cover wedding costs after Emily kept going over budget. But no matter how much kindness Carol showed her, Emily always acted like my wife existed beneath her. Every conversation revolved around status, money, designer brands, and social media appearances. She constantly talked about high-class weddings and elite guests, like she was auditioning for a reality show instead of marrying into a family that genuinely loved her. Carol noticed the attitude too, but she always defended Emily. "She's nervous," she'd whisper whenever Emily acted rude. "Wedding stress changes people. But stress doesn't create disrespect. It exposes it." By the wedding week, Emily had transformed into someone almost impossible to please. She screamed at servers over table placements, fired one florist because the roses looked cheap on camera, and even made my son leave a family dinner early because Carol accidentally posted a candid picture of her online before she approved it. I warned Michael privately several times, but love makes intelligent people ignore obvious problems. "Dad, she's just overwhelmed," he kept saying. Meanwhile, Carol kept trying harder and harder to earn respect that should have been automatic. The truth nobody at that wedding knew was that I had spent nearly a year preparing a surprise gift for the newlyweds, a fully paid $1 million lake house I planned to transfer into Michael's name during my speech at the reception. Carol and I wanted our son to start married life without financial pressure the way we once had. We sacrificed for years building my real estate business, and giving him that home felt like the perfect reward for everything our family survived together. I even carried the property documents inside my suit jacket the entire wedding day. But Emily destroyed that surprise before dinner was even served. The ballroom looked like something from a celebrity event. Crystal lights shimmered above marble floors while waiters moved between tables, carrying champagne trays worth more than my first car. Emily walked around in a custom designer gown, treating the entire evening like her personal coronation. Carol looked beautiful in a navy blue dress she had nervously spent weeks choosing. She asked me repeatedly that morning if it looked too simple compared to Emily's wealthy friends. I told her the truth every time. Elegance doesn't need attention to stand out. For most of the evening, Carol stayed quietly helpful behind the scenes. She greeted relatives, comforted nervous guests, fixed small problems without complaint, and even helped one elderly woman find her seat after the wedding coordinator disappeared. Then came the moment I will never forget. During the reception, one of the bartenders accidentally dropped an entire tray of champagne glasses near the dance floor. The crash echoed across the ballroom, and guests immediately turned to stare. The poor young waiter looked terrified, while the manager rushed over apologizing. Before staff could even clean the mess properly, Emily stormed across the room furious that the accident interrupted photos near the cake table. "Unbelievable," she snapped loudly. Then her eyes landed on Carol, standing nearby, and that's when everything changed. "Carol," Emily said sharply, while pointing toward the bar area, "can you help serve drinks until they fix this mess?" At first, I honestly thought I misunderstood her. But then Emily continued speaking in the same cold tone people use toward hired staff. "Just grab a tray or something. Guests are waiting." The room went quiet around us. My wife blinked in confusion. I'm not sure." Emily sighed dramatically and rolled her eyes. "Please don't make this difficult. We need people helping instead of standing around." Standing around! She said it to the woman who spent months helping finance and organize her wedding. Several nearby guests looked visibly uncomfortable, while one bridesmaid awkwardly stared down at her phone, pretending not to hear. I waited for Michael to say something, anything, but my son just stood there, embarrassed and silent, like a coward, terrified of upsetting his bride. That silence hurt almost worse than Emily's words. Carol forced a weak smile because that's who she is. Even humiliated, she still tried keeping peace. "All right," she whispered softly before reaching toward a nearby serving tray. Watching my wife lift that tray while wearing formal jewelry and heels nearly broke something inside me. This woman had sacrificed half her life for our family, and now she was being treated like unpaid hotel staff at her own son's wedding. I watched guests whisper quietly while Carol walked table to table, offering champagne with shaking hands, trying to pretend she wasn't deeply hurt. Emily returned to taking pictures near the cake seconds later like nothing happened. That was the moment I stopped caring about protecting anyone's feelings. About 10 minutes later, the DJ announced the family speeches. Emily smiled proudly beside Michael, while guests settled into their seats expecting emotional toasts and happy tears. Meanwhile, Carol quietly returned the serving tray and sat beside me, pretending everything was fine. Though I noticed she wouldn't make eye contact with anyone anymore. I reached into my jacket and felt the envelope containing the lake house documents. $1 million. Months of planning, gone in a single moment. When the DJ handed me the microphone, I stood slowly and walked toward the center of the ballroom. Emily smiled politely at first, probably expecting me to announce the surprise gift publicly. But the second she saw my expression, her confidence faded slightly. I looked around the ballroom carefully before speaking. "I plan to make tonight one of the happiest moments of my son's life," I began calmly. The room quieted immediately. "In fact, I came here tonight carrying a surprise gift worth over $1 million for Michael and Emily." Gasps and excited whispers spread across the ballroom instantly. Michael looked shocked while Emily's face lit up with excitement. I slowly pulled the envelope from my jacket and held it up slightly. Inside this envelope are the ownership papers to a lake house Carol and I plan to give the newlyweds tonight. Guests erupted into applause, while Emily looked seconds away from crying with happiness. But then I continued speaking. "However, I've changed my mind." The applause died instantly. Emily's smile disappeared. Michael looked confused. I turned slowly toward my wife, sitting quietly near the edge of the ballroom. "Because tonight," I said firmly, "I watched the most important woman in my life get treated like hired help at her own son's wedding." Silence crushed the room. Emily's face lost all color. Michael immediately looked horrified, realizing exactly where this was going. "The woman who was ordered to serve drinks tonight," I continued, "is the same woman who helped pay for this wedding, spent months helping organize it, and sacrificed most of her adult life, making sure Michael had opportunities we never did." Carol looked completely stunned, while tears slowly filled her eyes. I looked directly at Emily then, and anyone capable of humiliating her publicly doesn't deserve $1 million gift from this family. Guests stared openly now, while whispers exploded across nearby tables. Emily immediately stood up. "Thomas, I didn't humiliate anyone," she snapped defensively. I nodded once. "You ordered my wife to serve drinks while guests watched." "I was stressed," Emily cried. Everything was falling apart. "No," I replied calmly. "A champagne accident was falling apart. Your character was simply being revealed." The room went dead silent. Michael finally stood up then, looking pale with embarrassment. "Mom," he whispered toward Carol, but she only lowered her eyes sadly. I placed the envelope back into my jacket slowly. "The lake house will remain in Carol's name," I announced firmly, "because after tonight, she's the only person in this room I'm interested in rewarding." For several long seconds, nobody moved. Then, somewhere near the back of the ballroom, someone started clapping quietly. Another guest joined, then another, until eventually half the ballroom applauded, while Emily stood frozen beside the sweetheart table, realizing the $1 million future she imagined had disappeared in front of everyone. But the most unforgettable moment wasn't canceling the surprise gift. It was watching my wife finally realize that kindness does not make someone weak, and seeing an entire room full of people finally recognize her value at the exact same time.